Hello, hello, hello. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. We are back on the East Coast after a few days of gallivanting at Skankfest. How are you, sir?
I feel like this was the best Skankfest yet, and that live Part of the Problem that we did was the funnest thing I've ever done in comedy. And it was like being in a dream, being able to do something with Nick DiPaolo.
Dude, it was so great. And yeah, look, TJ Miller was great, Sam was great, and Nick DiPaolo, of course, it was great getting to hang with him a little bit at the festival, and it was great having him on the show. That episode, by the way, is I believe it's still up for purchase on Mint stream. So if you want to go grab the episode, you can there. I will be putting it up for subscribers only on partoftheproblem.com. It will never grace the public any other way. So you can sign up to support and get the episode. It really was a fantastic one. It was very different than a typical Part of the Problem, but we always kind of have a fun big live pay-per-view event at Skankfest there. But yes, so there is a way to get it, but we're not putting it on YouTube or anything like that. I don't think that would be possible. I think YouTube would explode. Anyway, so as you know, Rob and Natalie, I've told you guys, but I got sick out there at Skankfest, and then but I muscled through, and I performed on all of my shows, and then just found out I got COVID when I came home. So what I called muscling through, you might call being a super spreader. But the point is that the show went on and we had a good time, but I'm in full recovery mode now. So I apologize. Between the last week between Austin and Vegas and getting sick, the schedule's just been all off. I am home now, and we will get right back to it. Just a couple. Okay, so I recorded the 2024 State of the Union with Ari Shafir a week and a half ago or so. And so that episode, that's been up on the pay site for a few days now, but we'll be putting that one up for everyone. That should be up tomorrow. We got this episode today, and then I guess I'll do a debate recap episode tomorrow. Of course, Rob, tonight is the vice presidential debates. We will crown America's official weirdo after tonight. Who is it?
That's a great title for that. That's fun.
Who's the official weirdo here? We don't know. 2 weirdos will enter. 1 weirdo will leave. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could talk for a moment to preview this. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of curious what your opinion is, Rob. Typically speaking, vice presidential debates do not matter. Nobody is really voting for the bottom of a ticket on the presidential ticket. So, I don't know. Perhaps, I guess you could argue this is a different year than almost every other presidential election year. Maybe it matters more or less. I don't know. I don't really have a strong feeling on that. Do you? Do you think this matters, or it's just a distraction?
I think what matters here is how much of a liability one of these two people could be. So if JD Vance comes off like such an unlikable weirdo, I think that does drop Donald Trump down a peg, that he's so bad at picking people and that he's particularly bad at political hiring and management, that I think that will highlight one of his failures. And if he shows up and is a total weirdo, that's a bad look. However, if he's weird but smart and can maybe actually challenge Tim Walz on things like his political record, what exactly what his service history was and the military claims that he's made, or why he thinks it's important for tampons to be in bathrooms. Like, I mean, there's a potential with Walz for men's bathrooms for boys. Mm-hmm. So there's some Walz dirt on the table that if JD Vance is good enough at absolutely demolishing and highlighting, I mean, that could also be pretty detrimental to Kamala Harris. So I think you're right that this is more in the weeds, the fun stuff, if you follow us at our level to watch a vice presidential debate. But I do think that there's a couple interesting factors here that one of those two people could come off so poor that they, do take their candidate down a peg.
Yeah, it's right. So I tend to agree with that. I think that one of the things that's really remarkable and unique about this election season, and I mean there's several, but like there's assassination attempts. You don't usually have that. And obviously, Kamala Harris has been a candidate for a drastically shorter period than any candidate in modern American history. And also, she didn't win a primary. There's just like things that are like, this is not typically how it goes. But one of the thing to me that I still, I've been talking about this for weeks now, but that still just jumps out to me as the biggest differentiating factor, like the thing that's so different about this election than every other one, is Kamala Harris as a candidate. And the fact that and we're getting close enough to the election that I think it's kind of safe to say this essentially worked. Like it's over. This has been done successfully. Is that Kamala Harris is, unlike every other presidential candidate in my lifetime, at least, and I think beyond that, is that she's not running a presidential campaign. Like when I say that, I mean, she's running a campaign. She's not running on anything. She's not running on her presidential campaign in 2020. She's completely abandoned every single position that she took in 2020. She's not running on her track record as vice president. She's just kind of like cackles and says, Joe Biden's not here. So like, she's not attached to that guy. She's not attached to her former self. She's not running on her record as a senator or a prosecutor or anything, because they're all deeply unpopular. And so she's essentially just running as Joy, And in that same environment, let's say there's some low-hanging fruit of things that the Trump campaign could nail her on, and they have seemingly been unsuccessful at all of them. I'm still really shocked. And not only that, not only are they unsuccessful, it seems like the bullets are still in the chamber. Maybe that's a bad analogy to use this election cycle. I mean, peaceful, rhetorical bullets. But you get what I'm saying, that like Donald Trump still does not seem to have ever made a real effort to pin the Biden scandal on Kamala Harris, to say we all are kind of operating knowing we don't really have a president of the United States of America. And that hasn't come up. He's not going to dog whistle about the assassination attempts and the fact that the people who are in charge of his security are employees of Biden and Harris. You'd think he's not going to go after that. There's just so I guess in this environment, you would wonder, okay, well, can they pin Walz with something? Can they, and so maybe there's a little bit more of a necessity to have a big moment tonight, or an opportunity. The other thing that's just in my mind, I was kind of thinking about this morning is, and I guess this is kind of a bigger picture criticism of the race. And perhaps like if Ron DeSantis had been the nominee, that we'd be in a different situation. But it really is amazing. And I guess this isn't the one in the front of people's mind. It's a little bit easier in the front of people's mind to say like, oh, I can't believe that the assassination attempt isn't that big of a story. It only happened a couple months ago, and it seems like everyone's just kind of moving past it. Or Joe Biden being pulled out happened a couple months ago, and everyone's moving past it. But to me, it really is. It's so wild and so incredibly disturbing that in the year 2024, we're having a presidential election and COVID is a non-issue. As I sit here, positive, in front of you right now, this minor inconvenience that I have that, call me crazy, maybe wasn't worth shutting the world down over, is not even coming up. And part of that is because Donald Trump has such a terrible track record on it, and he's so awful and stupid and lazy that he can't even like the only thing he has to say about COVID is what a great job they did and how many millions of lives they saved and how we locked it down and we locked it down better than everyone. Then we opened it up and we opened it up great. And then the vaccine saved hundreds of millions of lives. That seems to be all he has to say about it. And in this vice presidential debate, looking at it, you're almost like, oh, like, look, Kamala Harris was in the Senate. And then she was a particularly inactive vice president. She doesn't really own anything. Joe Biden is not running, and so he gets to kind of just slunk away. J.D. Vance is a senator, but now on stage is a governor, a lockdown governor who was one of the most aggressive. And not only that, but has a particularly horrible track record on the Black Lives Matter riots of the summer of 2020, which, let's say, destroyed his state even worse than just the average one. He was like the ground zero governor of for this Black Lives Matter stuff. And I'm wondering if that's even going to come up in the debate tonight. I don't know what type of position is J.D. Vance really in to when you're running as number 2 to Donald Trump to even try to criticize him. So I'll be interested to see if that comes up. There's no doubt that it's to have something as major as we shut the world down, and then whatever, to go through the entire COVID regime up to the hysteria about the vaccine turning out to have been sold on completely fraudulent grounds. You know what I mean? Like this, is there anyone here, by the way, no, the funny thing is no one's even pretending anymore. We're just supposed to move on to, oops, that never happened. Nobody's even, if I told you some people got COVID at this festival that we were just at, this last week, is there anyone who even goes like, well, that's probably because you weren't vaccinated? Like, is anyone even pretending? Is anyone even pretending? Like, there's not even the most hardcore, like of the, like, say, like the woke progressives who don't like Legion of Skanks very much. That was one of the things, by the way, for years, there's that little group of like woke kids who tries to get Legion of Skanks canceled and still hasn't figured out that we're uncancelable. So there was for a while, they tried to get us canceled for, being Nazis or whatever the accusation was. But during like 2020, 2021, they did go pretty hard at us for having super spreader events. Like very conveniently, the people they already wanted canceled, they now wanted canceled for totally scientific reasons. But do any of them admit they were wrong? No. Do any of them continue to talk about the vaccine? No, because they know that's too ridiculous. So what's the plan? Like, with every goddamn COVID tyrant, just move on. Let's just stop. Let's just pretend all those years never happened. Let's pretend we didn't get in these we didn't like morally condescend to you about what a bad person you were and how good a person I was. Oh, what's that? I'm wrong about everything I'm saying? Okay, just move on. Not even address it at all. And I'll tell you, it's every bit as much a disgrace for the Republicans as it is for the Democrats that they are letting them do this. That they were so pathetic when the crisis hit that they're going to accept that deal, essentially. We'll accept the deal. Just say nothing. And if there's anything that Trump has to say, well, I mean, obviously, he's been off for 4 years and is running for president again. So like he's done deep reading on this issue and he understands the crisis. And now, not at the time, but now he really gets it. And he has deep concern about the tens of millions of Americans whose lives were ruined over this. Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. I'm getting no, none of that's true. No, he's just going to brag about how great he was. That's all he's interested in shoehorning into this conversation. So anyway, I don't know. That's just been on my mind, but it's like, oh, you actually get one of these like lockdown governors on stage and they should be taken to task in front of tens of millions of people. and they probably won't be. Probably it won't even come up.
Yeah, what a missed opportunity to highlight. Don't let these dummies manage your life anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's such a great then lens to be like, let's take a look at some of their other policies and how they want to take more control over this industry and tell you how to live.
Yep. Well, the thing that I would imagine will come up, and I guess this will be interesting to see how exactly JD Vance approaches this. I gotta say, I'm talking about the wars, of course. I think my guess is he's going to be good on Ukraine. I think
both sides have the exact same thing to say about Israel. The Democrats might want to pretend like they're not going to as aggressively support them as Donald Trump might go, hey, if you're Jewish and you don't vote for me, you actually hate Jews and you want to kill them or whatever. So Donald Trump's being more aggressive, thinking that it's a giant trophy to say, hey, I support and back Israel 1,000% no matter what. The Democrats seem to want to just go, well, we love both sides and they're both people and we want them both to feel great and we're going to give more bombs to Israel so that they can nuke those guys. But not nuke, but you get what I'm saying. I think on Ukraine, Donald Trump might have a slightly better position of, hey, we got to end the war, but I don't think JD Vance is necessary. I think they probably have basically the same position on those, and that's not going to be the most interesting part of the debate.
Well, I think that one of the things that I'm looking for, that I'm concerned about, and we could talk about this a little bit too, because I did just have Congressman Matt Gaetz on the show the other day. We did a very short episode together, and I wish we had a little bit more time. I probably could have pushed him a little bit more, although I did, I think, ask the question several times. But I will say this stuff that Gaetz is talking about Iran being behind one of the teams that's trying to assassinate Donald Trump, I would not be surprised if this also comes out of if this also comes out of JD Vance's mouth.
It makes no sense to me, particularly with a Gaetz character and the way I see his role thus far in the Conservative Party, why no one will bring up, hey, is this the deep state? I don't understand why even posing that question, the Republicans seem so uninterested in exploring or putting out that narrative to the general public of, hey, the last time the CIA worked against him to say that he was a Russian asset, they tried to pull him down in court cases, and when all of that didn't work, are they trying to assassinate him, and who's actually running our government? And that's why if you actually want a democracy, you need us in office. Even if it's not true, it's a sexy storyline. Why are they so afraid of playing that card? It's odd.
And especially because you're kind of protected in a way. Because like you said, like if you're just asking that question, it's like, hey, even if it turns out not to be true, you can totally reasonably say, like, well, hey, I'm sorry, the deep state was framing him for treason. They were weaponizing the justice system against him. So forgive me if when he's shot at, then I also speculate as to whether they might be behind that or not. But I will say, like, I'll take it further than even that and say that while we've kind of alluded to several times on the show before that me and you are not like Trump supporters or Trump voters, we're not out here advocating other people go support Donald Trump. If he makes it basically impossible for us to not be criticizing him every other show.
But it hurts my soul more if Kamala Harris wins.
Yes, well, you've always kind of found yourself rooting a little bit for Donald Trump and rooting for like kind of the corporate media and the Democrat and Republican establishment to be butthurt again because he wins. But as over the last week, as you hear Trump and Gaetz and these guys talking about how Iran was actually behind it, I'll tell you, it really pushes me from that position even. Or it's like, oh, I got no one to even root for here. I might be more scared of you guys winning now than I am of the other side. I mean, like look, I should have asked Gaetz, and I did think to do this, but you know, he's good at being a politician. But I almost want to ask, so he goes, essentially he told me on the show, and you guys can go, I think I'm characterizing this accurately. He goes, he was briefed by the Department of Homeland Security that Iran was behind this attack.
Can I ask, was it behind that attack or just had that there are teams within the United States that are
No.
trying to carry out attacks.
No, right. Not behind that attack. Just that there's a team trying to carry it out. They sure do say it in a way where it sounds like what he's saying is Iran was behind that attack, but that's not actually what they're claiming. They are claiming that of the teams, the Iran one is the most well-financed one or something like that. Although, what other details can you give me on what a team actually means? Nothing. When I asked the congressman, I said, okay, well, like, what evidence is there? He essentially said, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you type thing. Like, basically just went, oh, I'm not going to get into that, or, that's classified or something. And it's like, okay. And I said to him at one point, I said, well, forgive me, but after Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, after COVID, after Russiagate, after all of this stuff, I'm going to need a little bit more than a politician says that someone in intelligence told them so. So, like, do we get to see any evidence? But, the question I probably should have asked him, which I was thinking of, but I didn't ask, was, okay, why are you not introducing a formal declaration of war against Iran? You're sitting here telling me that you're not Lindsey Graham. You're not one of these guys who just wants to go to war with Iran. But you're also telling me they have a well-financed team to assassinate your presidential candidate? I don't know. I'm old school. That sounds like an act of war to me. So, like, if you're going to make this argument, how is your argument not that we should invade right now?
It would seem to me, with the extent that our border is open, if I was a foreign adversarial government, I'd be trying to get as many operatives into the United States of America as possible right now. And so to what extent is a presidential candidate assassination team just, some sort of almost foreign intelligence? I'm not looking at the intelligence that they have. Are they actually trying to currently assassinate the president? Or are they putting together operatives for if they wanted to do something like that, taking advantage of an opportunity of maybe the easiest time to get people, or seemingly based off the news that I see, get people into the country?
Yeah. Look, I don't know. I would not be surprised if this is all bullshit and there's just nothing even like that. And the FBI, I know there was one thing where
it's not winning bullshit. The winning bullshit is look at the security failures and what the deep state's doing to try and undermine the security of our country. And that's the narrative. It's not, if we want to be safe here, we got to go to war with Iran.
Yeah, but it's not, the end game here might be just to move this MAGA movement in a more hawkish, posture with Iran. And look, I'm just saying that my guess, my prediction, and we'll see if I'm right about this or not, but my guess is JD Vance is going to come out with the rhetorically strongest possible support for Israel and condemnation for Iran and a whole bunch of threatening Iran and stuff like that. I remember his first interview at the Republican National Convention after he was picked for vice president was all about how tough Trump was on Iran and how tough they're going to get on Iran if Trump is reelected. So just saying, that is my guess. I will say, zooming out more broadly speaking, it is so as of right now. I don't know, Rob, if you how much of the news you've consumed today. I'm after the last few days a little more behind than I typically am. But right now, as we're recording this, I believe Iranian rockets are headed toward Israel. There was also a shooting in I think outside of Tel Aviv. I'd have to double check this. That appears, at least it's being reported that it was an Arab. I don't know if it was an Israeli citizen or somebody from outside, but Israel, of course, as you guys know, if you've been paying attention over the last week or so, is now at war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is, for the people, I'd say, for the last year, probably the number one concern has been, this spreading into a wider war. We're there now. Obviously, Houthis have been involved from pretty much the beginning. You got Hezbollah in Lebanon involved now. Obviously, there's Syria, and now Iran has joined in, sending some rockets over there. So there's, there are these two major wars that the Biden administration is married to, and they are both going just catastrophically bad. And okay, I suppose in the conflict in Ukraine, you'd say, okay, well, the worst case scenario there is a nuclear exchange, as Russia is the largest nuclear power in the history of the world. So we haven't gotten there. That's the best you could give Joe Biden's foreign policy. We haven't gotten to a nuclear war yet. So he's got that going for him. Short of that, the Bidens, squashed a peace deal at the very beginning of the war in 22. They've drawn this thing out. There's been hundreds of thousands of people killed in the war, and Ukraine has less of its territory, has less prospects to end on a deal that's nearly as favorable as the one that the U.S. insisted was killed. Israel has, so you have the countries. Forget even if you have if you have interest in the other side, but just in terms of the countries that Biden has been trying to support, Ukraine has been devastated. Israel has had their global opinion fall by more than in their entire existence in the last year, and is now in a situation where it's not even just like they're taking on Hamas in Gaza, a war they probably couldn't handle by themselves, from what I've seen most experts report on this war. But now they're totally dependent on us in a war on multiple fronts, which is putting them, I'd say, at greater risk than I've ever seen Israel at. So it is, no matter how perfect JD Vance is on any of this or not, there's a lot to hit them on there in terms of foreign policy. And then, of course, you've got immigration and inflation, which are still the biggest issues. And so, we'll expect to see. He should be, if he's got any skills at this, he should be able to land some blows on some of that stuff.
And in the last one, we heard so little policy. This might actually do something to highlight some of the bad Kamala Harris policies.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is My Patriot Supply. I can't say enough good things about My Patriot Supply. I've told you guys many times, I keep their 4-week emergency food kits in my house. I like knowing that if an emergency should strike, my family will not be in need for food, and that's why you guys should check it out as well. With over 2,000 calories per day, there's more than enough food to go around during times of social unrest or government crackdowns or, God forbid, something worse. The food lasts up to 25 years, and it's ready whenever you need it, so you get peace of mind knowing you're taken care of. Right now, you can get $50 off the same 4-week emergency food kits that I keep in my house by going to my site, preparewithsmith.com. Preparewithsmith.com. Save $50 on your 4-week emergency food kits from My Patriot Supply, and they'll send it over as fast as humanly possible. It usually gets there in about a day. So go check out my site, preparewithsmith.com. All right, let's get back into the show. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Here, let's go to this the video clip that I sent you, which I really do think this is I thought this was pretty funny here. Given the state of Biden's foreign wars, it's pretty objectively going bad. So here is Morning Joe to tell us how we should feel about these wars.
To Belarus. Talk about your series and what you're trying to help Americans better understand.
So one of the arguments of autocracy in America, and by the way, it's related to what you were just talking about with Trump, Putin, and Zelensky, is that America's relationships with the outside world and America's alliances also influence American democracy and American habits and American behavior. If you can look back over time, the fact that we've had Democratic allies in the past has been influential on our own democracy. I mean, there are older examples of our British abolitionism had a big influence on American abolitionists. During the Cold War, we were shoring up European democracy, but when we put democracy at the center of our foreign policy, it also had an effect domestically. Were there to be a shift, were the United States to be linked instead with the kleptocratic world, were the war in Ukraine to end with some kind of American-Russian alliance designed to crush Ukraine or crush Europe, which is one of the things that Trump might mean when he talks about ending the war in one day, that would have an influence on us too. The kleptocratic practices of Russia, which are already here, would expand the influence of anonymous companies and offshore bank accounts, all that stuff which is typical of the autocratic world and is which we help co-create. That would have an influence here too.
Well. All right, listen, when I swear to God, some of these people, it's almost like, I remember there's a great video with Noam Chomsky when he's debating that Foucault, I can't remember his name, guy, the postmodernist, but he just calls him out for he goes, you guys basically just invented your own language so you can sound smart and not say anything. Listen, all of that, it is designed to make you go, oh, that sounds like a smart lady. I can't even follow what she's saying because she's saying nothing, literally nothing. This is, by the way, this is what you have for Atlantic writers. When they're not sexting Bobby Kennedy, this is what they're doing, saying absolutely nothing. The way we interface with democracy has effects domestically on our policies here, and kleptocracy versus democracy. During the Cold War, when we were working on democracy in Europe, yes, that had an effect on our domestic politics. Lady, what the hell are you talking about? Say it in a way that it could mean anything to anyone. It's just all, by the way, this is all utter nonsense. None of it's true. And then she goes, and then her final takeaway is that Donald Trump might be saying, when he says he wants to end the war in a day, he might be saying a U.S.-Russian partnership that crushes Europe. Might be. Kleptocracy, not democracy. Like, what? First of all, democracy... Anytime anyone ever talks about democracy promotion, just put them into a category of horrific war criminals. I know that might seem sloppy and lazy, but I'm just telling you it's the quickest way to get there because it means nothing. Spreading democracy, working with democracies. What does that mean? What does that mean? America, that's what America's in the business of? That's American foreign policy. We really believe in democracy in Iraq and in Russia and in China. Not so much in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine. In those places. Hey, tell me, lady, when we overthrew the democratically elected government in Ukraine in 2004, was that because we loved democracy? Was that part of our democracy promotion? How about when we did the same thing in Ukraine in 2014? When we overthrew the democratically elected president of Ukraine in 2014, was that because we loved democracy? By the way, the Yanukovych election in 2010, I believe it was, the elections were verified by the EU. So there was no debate about whether or not Yanukovych was the democratically elected president of Ukraine. Hey, when he offered to move elections up and have a new round of elections in 2014, did we say, great, we'll take that deal because we love democracy so much? Oh, no, we didn't, did we? How'd we feel about democracy when Egypt democratically elected the Muslim Brotherhood? Did we support that? Were we appalled when that government got overthrown less than a year later? Oh, no. I'm sure we'll stop working with Saudi Arabia, right? Because they're not a democracy. Last I checked. Oh, no, is that? No, they've been our biggest trading partner since the 70s. Okay. I'm going to leave Israel alone for a second, that democratic country. They're a democratic country if you ignore the fact that half of the people the government rules over can't vote. If you can get past that part, they're a total democracy. So anyway, what is this? Look, the U.S. supports democracy to the extent that we believe a democratic process will result in a government who will do business with us. That's the extent of American democracy spreading, okay, or democracy promotion. But anyway, I just find it to be hilarious that the boogeyman here is just this total made up, like it's just more Russiagate insanity. That what you see when Donald Trump says, I want to end the war, you, Joe Sixpack at home, having a beer on your couch, that might sound like kind of attractive to you. You might go, oh, ending a war sounds better than continuing a war, right? Like maybe stop killing people. That sounds good. But you see what that really is that's just a Russian plan. Donald Trump's going to come out as soon as he gets in there and be like, I am pro Vladimir Putin now. And by the way, we're giving him Europe. We're giving him all of Europe. It's all theirs. Not just Ukraine. He wants the whole thing. I don't know, Rob. What more can you say about this?
A brilliant takedown of why I completely spaced out and had no idea what that lady was saying. So yeah. I'm so happy that you came through and just said she said nothing. I'm like, oh, good. I didn't miss anything. Well, I do want to talk about Trump's meeting with Zelensky.
Sure.
Because I thought that was a very weak moment. Because he was standing up there and it kind of seemed like he was going to placate Zelensky a little bit, or that he wasn't going boss mode into Zelensky of, no, you're not getting any more money, because that's the negotiating trick that Trump's going to need to bring to the table to end the war is we're not supporting this anymore, so we're sitting down at the table and you're going to figure out what they're keeping so that we can call it a war. In standing up there with Zelensky, Trump's looking like a weak old man. He's just not having good moments. And like I said, I'm not going out there to vote for Trump, but I'd really like to see Kamala lose. And this election's driving me nuts because she's running a fine campaign and that she's not coming out like the buffoon that she is. She hasn't talked about buses. She hasn't talked about stars and big and small. We haven't had any of that. She's gotten through her fluff piece interviews without having to take responsibility for the Biden administration, the border, inflation. And then when I see Trump, he's just not having good moments, which includes the Zelensky one, which might be one of his better policies and pitches of, hey, I can end this within a week. But when he's standing up there next to Zelensky, just going, he's been through a lot and it's terrible what you've been through. It already starts winking. Wait, are you flipping on this one, Trump?
Yeah, I mean, and he has flip-flopped a bit on Ukraine. Like he goes back and forth between like, I'll end the war in a day, and then he gets on like, Europe will pay their fair share, and you're like, but your fair share of what? I thought this was going to be over. And so like, what is your pitch here? That you'll negotiate a peace to this, or that you'll negotiate a better deal in which we continue funding the war?
It should be the fair share of the apology check to the Ukrainian people for the mess that we forced them into. That should be the ongoing next war support should just be checks to help the Ukrainian people for the amount of lives that they lost, for us to try and poke at Russia. In a failed venture that brought them closer to China, did not make us look any stronger. And, there will be no victory from it.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Entera Skincare. It's a peptide revolution. In the quest for youthful, radiant skin, Entera Skincare unveils the secret ingredient, peptides. Their scientifically formulated products are infused with powerful peptides, the building blocks of skin's natural resilience. Peptides dive deep into your skin, stimulating collagen production, reducing wrinkles, and restoring firmness. Whether you're combating the early signs of aging or nurturing mature skin, Entera's peptide-rich formulas cater to all skin types. Experience the transformative power of peptides. With Entera, you're not just nourishing your skin, you're unlocking its youthful potential. Join the peptide revolution. Embrace the future of skincare with Entera. Entera Skincare, where science meets beauty. Discover more at enteraskincare.com/problem, and make sure to use the promo code problem for 10% off your entire order. That's enteraskincare.com/problem, promo code problem for 10% off. All right, let's get back into the show. Yeah. Well, I've kind of I basically have been saying this for, the whole campaign. But really, since Kamala Harris got in, and since their debate, I know some Trump supporters were a little bit upset with me after the debate with Kamala Harris, and my kind of feeling on that. I gotta say, I do think the time since then has kind of borne out that I was right. Donald Trump certainly didn't help himself at all with that performance. It didn't change anything positively for him in the campaign, but. Just to be clear, man, and this is, one of Donald Trump's, maybe not even one of, maybe the most powerful thing that Donald Trump has ever said is that he said, they hate me because they hate you. And they hate me because I represent you, And I do think I think he's correct when he says that. You can see if you look at CNN or MSNBC's coverage of politics at all, you can see it's not just that they hate Donald Trump. They hate Trump supporters. Right? They really, really hate that whole section of America. And me and you don't. I don't hate Trump supporters. I love Trump supporters. I love America. And Trump supporters are very American. And I think that for the most part, Trump supporters are so much better than they were 15 years ago. I mean, so many of those people are the ones who were all in on the terror wars, all in on the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, those disasters. And they turned around on that. And not all of them, but a large percentage of them. So just to be clear, to Trump supporters, I understand why you're defensive of your guy, especially when you see him being attacked in the most vicious ways by all of the worst people in our society. But just hear what I'm saying to you is something different. What I'm saying is that it's such an embarrassment for you guys that this is the best guy making the case on your behalf. And it's just, I think look, if Donald Trump does end up losing this election, we're going to be at an interesting crossroads in this country for where this populist energy goes after Donald Trump. And if you want to blame the system, there'll be more than enough there for you to find. You can blame them for demonizing him, framing him for treason, weaponizing the justice system against him, impeaching him multiple times, and I'm sure you'll come up with some new ones between now and November 5th. And I don't even mean come up with as if they're not real. Maybe they will be real. But fuck all that. At a certain point, you're a man, you got to take responsibility for this. It's like if I'm fist fighting a 5-year-old and I lose, and then you sit there and go, well, the ref was cheating and the judges cheated and all this. It's like, yeah, that may all be true. But this probably shouldn't have gone to a decision. You know what I mean? I probably should have been able to stop this fight. And Donald Trump, just to not be able to land almost anything. And I see this after that last debate, where it's kind of like sometimes Trump supporters look, dude, I saw so many of those they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats videos that were goddamn hilarious. And you're like, I'm glad we're all having fun here. Do you not understand how awful a moment that was for Donald Trump? How awful it was. I mean, dude, boggles the mind that you could have a scenario with the low-hanging fruit that he has, where they've literally all come your way on your central issue and are now competing to occupy the space that you occupy on this issue after demonizing you in the most vicious way for having that position. And you can't put together like 45 seconds of just a compelling, this is why I said build the wall and you all attacked me for it, and look at you now, and you were the border czar and it's worse than ever and only I can, and instead you come out with they're eating the dogs, and you just sound like a crazy person, dude. And that's just on the immigration issue, on Biden being senile, on the wars, on COVID, on all of this stuff. He's just been unable to land any like damaging knockout blows. How is that possible, dude? Like, I'm sorry, that's a loss. And by the way, I'm not saying that they're not also going to cheat him. Maybe they will. But like, you got to do better than that. I don't know.
By the way, in talking about how the affinity for a typical Trump supporter, which to me is a guy who owns his own construction business and has a Trump flag off of his pickup truck, I feel like the core personality is people that want to see a death to the woke culture and being preached to. They would like a closed border, and they'd like for the economy to be better. And I also think that there's a flavor for what the hell are we doing with these foreign wars, but that might just be because might be my rosy-eyed glasses of what.
No, I think there's definitely at least some of that.
Yeah. But I think the core of it is I don't like this woke nonsense, and I'd like for the economy to be better. And like, God bless, because they're right.
And yeah, and look, and just the kind of deeper, maybe a little bit vaguer, but the feeling that like DC is permeated with a bunch of goddamn criminals, like that this whole thing is so incredibly corrupt. And like, they're right. They're totally right about that. Like, I mean, look, I'm not saying that like the average Trump supporter can articulate it in the most accurate way, but that's not your job. You're not supposed to have to do that. It's your right to have a government that is at least somewhat functional and somewhat on your side. And it is not your responsibility to have to articulate that in the exact correct way. Like, if you basically just smell that Washington, D.C. is fucking corrupt and screws over the American people on behalf of the powerful, you're right. You know, and like, you deserve somebody who will drain the swamp and all that shit. So like, there's something there. Like, I'm on your side. But man, is this guy just such an embarrassment. And look, there were way better people who never could have gotten as close to power as Trump, because he's rich and famous and brash and has all the qualities that he needs. But man, I mean, there's just no like, there's no basic understanding of what's going on or basic game plan, or there's no ability for him to like put his own ego aside, even for a moment, to like just make the compelling point on behalf of the American people. It's just not there. Anyway, we'll see what happens tonight. Maybe it's best for Donald Trump that he won't be on the stage tonight, and see if somebody else can do it. Okay, I do want to in the time we have left here, I wanted to go over to this Ta-Nehisi Coates. I might be saying this guy's name wrong. So Mr. Coates is an author. He's some very, like highly esteemed kind of woke progressive type. And so he's got a new book out. The book is called The Message. I have not read the book. Evidently he deals with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in this book, or at least in part of this book. I've I've read more than enough books about the history of Israel, Palestine. I don't think I need to get it from this woke progressive guy. But he's been out promoting his book. He was on the CBS morning show, and they had an interesting kind of exchange. It's been going super viral. So I thought maybe we would just kind of break this down from our non-progressive woke point of view as these two wokesters kind of battle it out. I thought this might be fun. So let's play a little bit of this clip.
Guest is the acclaimed New York Times best-selling author Ta-Nehisi Coates. His new book, The Message, is a trio of interconnected essays that examine how the stories we tell or avoid telling can shape and even distort our reality. In the book, Coates reflects on his emotional first trip to Africa to visit Dakar, Senegal. Then he takes readers to Columbia, South Carolina, where he reports on the attempted banning of one of his books on race. And finally, Coates travels to the Middle East to witness the Israeli-Palestinian conflict firsthand. Ta-Nehisi Coates, good morning. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. Good morning, guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. You say that this book is written specifically for writers, stating that the task for young writers should be nothing less than changing the world. Why do you feel like writers should bear that responsibility?
Saving the world. Saving the world. Just to be really specific. Writing is how we interpret so much of everything that is around us. The Message is a political book. It argues that much of our politics actually happens before we walk into a voting booth, that our choices around us, that who we believe is human, who we don't believe is human, what policies we believe should be in the world, which policies we don't, are actually shaped largely by writing and the stories we tell. And so I believe that writers, and particularly young writers, have so much to do in the politics and in this time when, obviously we have so much conflict and there's so many quote unquote issues.
Okay, hold on.
I want to dive into the Israel-Palestine section of
I apologize, guys. We probably could have just skipped to this point. He said absolutely nothing in any of that. By the way, writing is not how we change the world. Wake up, bro. It's podcasting now. That's what we do. Okay? You get a microphone and you talk into it. Nobody writes anymore. This is old shit. Anyway, sorry, that was all nothing. Here's, but I do like how you can already see this, the nervous Jewish energy of this CBS host is already, like, as soon as they started talking about it. I say that with love. It's deep inside me, so I recognize it when I see it in others. All right, let's play here.
the book's the largest section of the book. And I have to say, when I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. And so then I found myself wondering, why does Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I've known for a long time, read his work for a long time, very talented, smart guy, leave out so much? Why leave out that Israel is surrounded by countries that want to eliminate it? Why leave out that Israel deals with terror groups that want to eliminate it? Why not detail anything of the first and the second intifada, the cafe bombings, the bus bombings, the little kids blown to bits? And is it because you just don't believe that Israel in any condition has a right to exist?
Well, I would say the perspective that you just outlined, there is no shortage of that perspective in American media. That's the first thing I would say. I am most concerned always with those who don't have a voice, with those who don't have the ability to talk. I have asked repeatedly in my interviews whether there is a single network, mainstream organization in America with a Palestinian American bureau chief or correspondent who actually has a voice to articulate their part of the world. I've been a reporter for 20 years. The reporters of those who believe more sympathetically about Israel and its right to exist don't have a problem getting their voice out. But what I saw in Palestine, what I saw on the West Bank, what I saw in Haifa in Israel, what I saw in the South Hebron Hills, those were the stories that I have not heard. And those were the stories that I was most occupied with. I wrote a 260-page book. It is not a treatise on the entirety of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
But if you were to read this book, you would be left wondering, why does any of Israel exist? What a horrific place, committing horrific acts on a daily basis. So I think the question is central and key.
Just pause it right here.
If Israel has a right.
Look, the problem with Coates, right, is that he is a woke progressive too. So they're just here trying to out woke each other for a moment. And so his response was terrible. Like, none of that makes any sense. And even this thing of going like, it's like they're just all so obsessed with identity. So his response is like, well, what news outlet has a Palestinian bureau chief? Like, I don't know why that should be relevant at all. It's like, I don't know. There's like, I don't know how many Palestinians there are total. I think there's 2 million in Israel. There's like 5 million in Gaza and the West Bank. And then there's some more in Jordan and Lebanon. There's more. But regardless, the total Palestinian population is not like that huge. It wouldn't be surprising that in America, there wouldn't be a bureau chief who happens to be Palestinian. And like, that doesn't really matter anyway. But if you think about the question that was asked, there's something amazing about how absurd it is. Because his initial objection is he goes, oh, you're talking about the horrible treatment of the Palestinians from the Israelis, but you didn't mention that there's all these, bad Arab countries around them. You didn't talk about the first and second intifada. You didn't talk about terrorism. He's basically just complaining that you're not framing this in a way that makes Israel look good. Like, what the hell, man? You're supposed to, like it would be on, if I wrote a book on the U.S. slave trade, and your criticism of my book was that I didn't deal with the African slave trade and the Muslim slave trade and the European slave trade. So you make it look like America's it's like, I don't know, that's what I was writing about. I'm like, yeah, does that look really bad? Yeah, it does. But you know why that looks really bad? Because it was horrible. It was bad. What do you mean? I'm not making the claim nothing else bad ever happened nowhere. And by the way, as someone who's done a lot of these debates over the last year, it's amazing how much this argument comes up. Like, if I start talking about the Nakba and you start talking about the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who were kicked out of Israel, they immediately go, well, what about the Jews who were kicked out of Iraq? How come you're not talking about that? As if that's some type of counter. As if like, oh yeah, you're right. Now it's okay, I guess. Like, what? Like, or it's like, okay, that was bad too. Can we talk about this now? And so the whole thing is that he says at the end there, he goes, but if I didn't know none of that stuff and I read this, I might start thinking Israel's a really bad place where horrible things happen.
Just another example, same point, but if I wrote a book, The Bombing of Dresden, and it was just about the victims and the families and everything that was lost when Churchill was bombing Dresden. And then, you get on, you're like, yeah, but you didn't write anything about how bad Hitler was. That's not the book I was writing.
Yeah.
I'm highlighting the story of the individuals who Churchill was pretty horrific to, and highlighting the question of, hey, should we not be bombing civilian areas?
Yeah.
And telling this other story. Oh, that's irresponsible because then people might not support, I guess the war machine on everything.
Right. And look, and like even and that is what Coates's, I think, is a reasonable response to him, is that if you were to say, well, how come you didn't write a book on how awful Hitler is? You could go, that book's been written. Like, that's been covered. It's actually been, like, several people have written books about that. Like, there's just it'd be one thing if you had an objection to the information. Like, you were like, hey, you wrote this, but this isn't true. But he's not saying that. He's saying that you wrote this thing, no argument about whether it's true, but it might leave someone who reads it to go, oh, this sounds like a bad country. Like, you can't make this up. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Monetary Metals. I love this company. They are revolutionizing the precious metal space, allowing you to not only own precious metals, but to earn a yield in precious metals on those precious metals. And right now, they have the first true silver bond since 1834. You can earn 12% annual interest on silver paid in silver. Now, you must be an accredited investor to participate. It's a 3-year term. The bond is financing a publicly traded mining company located in the Western United States. Click the link in the episode description or head over to monetary-metals.com to see how you could start earning interest in silver and gold, paid in silver and gold. This company is truly revolutionizing the space and finally creating a true alternative to saving in dollars. Monetary-metals.com. All right, let's get back into the show. All right, let's keep playing.
right to exist? And if your answer is no, then I guess the question becomes, why do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Why do 20 different Muslim countries have a right to exist?
My answer is that no country in this world establishes its ability to exist through rights. Countries establish their ability to exist through force, as America did. And so I think this question of right to Israel does exist. It's a fact. The question of its right is not a question that I would be faced with any other country.
But you write a book that delegitimizes the pillars of Israel. It seems like an effort to topple the whole building of it. So I come back to the question, and it's what I struggled with throughout this book. What is it that so particularly offends you about the existence of a Jewish state that is a Jewish safe place and not any of the other states out there?
There's nothing that offends me about a Jewish state. I am offended by the idea of states built on ethnocracy, no matter where they are.
Muslim included.
I would not want a state where any group of people laid down their citizenship rights based on ethnicity. The country of Israel is a state in which half the population exists on one tier of citizenship, and everybody else that's ruled by Israelis exists on another tier, including Palestinian Israeli citizens. The only people that exist on that first tier are Israeli Jews. Why do we support that? Why is that okay? I'm the child of Jim Crow. I'm the child of people that were born into a country where that was exactly the case, of American apartheid. I walk over there and I walk through the occupied territories and I walk down the street in Hebron. And a guy says to me, I can't walk down the street unless I profess my religion. I'm with another pastor. No. I want to. This is very, very important.
It is
extremely important.
Yeah, let me lay it down.
I'm working with the person that is guiding me is a Palestinian whose father, whose grandfather and grandmother was born in this town. And I have more freedom to walk than he does. He can't ride on certain roads. He can't get water in the same way that Israeli citizens who live less than a mile away from him can.
And why is that okay?
Why
is that? Why is there no agency in this book for the Palestinians? They exist in your narrative merely as victims of the Israelis, as though they were not offered peace at any juncture, as though they don't have a stake in this as well. What is their role in the lack of a Palestinian?
I have a very, 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 very moral compass about this. And again, perhaps it's because of my ancestry. Either apartheid is right or it's wrong. It's really, really simple. Either what I saw was right or it's wrong. I am, for instance, against the death penalty. What the person did to get the death penalty, it really doesn't matter to me. I don't care if they were selling a nickel bag of marijuana or if they were a serial killer. I am against the death penalty.
Oh my God, just pause it. Pause it. Oh my God, the woke are just the worst at arguing. Oh my God, it's just by the way, the guy... Okay, I do care what the guy did who got the death penalty. Like, listen, I'm against the death penalty also, but yeah, I do have a slightly different feeling about whether you're executing someone for petty shoplifting or murder in the first degree. Like, leave that aside. That's really, really stupid. And I just hate, God, there's something so awful about progressive woke culture where it just encourages people to say things like, I have a very, very, very strong moral compass about this. Like, what? You can't just say in the middle of an argument that you're more moral than the other guy. And why? Because of my history. Because I'm black. And so, all right, this is all stupid. But did you catch the part there where he goes, hey, you realize that, like, I mean, essentially what he's arguing, and he's correct here, is that he goes, Palestinians have, like, no rights whatsoever. They're like literally in the land where they're from. They have no rights, even down to the most basic thing is like the freedom to travel down a road. They can't do that. Okay. I can go there and do that. Any Jew in the world can go and become a citizen of Israel, except maybe the ones who criticize them too much. And yet these Palestinians have no rights. And then he goes, but why is that? Why do you deny agency to these people? And by the way, they've been offered a state before. And just think about that mentality for a second. So wait, what are you saying? Agency to who? See, here's the thing, right? All types of things like agency, guilt, innocence, these are all terms that make a lot of sense when you're dealing with an individual. When you try to collectivize them, all of these concepts get turned on their head and mean nothing anymore. So if you're going to say they have agency, yes, they have agency. All people have agency, right? But is your suggestion there that the average Palestinian is responsible for the situation that they're in? That they have done something to bring this on themselves? That the average Palestinian, what? Are we only talking about adults, or are kids included in this too? What did they launch the 1967 war and lose it? No, they didn't. Were they responsible? Are they even responsible for, let's even say the bullshit, which is not true at all, but let's just say it was true that the Israelis offered the Palestinian leadership everything they wanted. When are you claiming they did that? When? In the year 2000? 25 years ago? So what, those people are responsible for their leaders 25 years ago turning down a deal? And so what? They should just be subjugated forever? For eternity? You're just ruled by some other, or at least 25 years. What, another 25? Is that what you think agency is? Like, do you see how ridiculous all of this is? And look, Coates is right. Just say, like, why on earth would we support that? You see how much how crazy they get to just return the framing back to, like, but why don't you think Israel has a right to exist?
I hate
why don't you write about this other stuff?
I hate that that question is like if you said, hey, I think you should have a right to own guns, and it goes, oh, so you think kids should be killed in schools? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying Israel doesn't, well, I guess maybe he's saying Israel in its current form shouldn't exist. But but
whatever.
Countries are xenophobic. Like, Japan should be allowed to remain Japanese, and Jews should be able to establish an area and go, hey, we only want Jews to live here. The issue is that they're ruling over a second group of people that they don't seem to want to then have their own. They're not allowing them to have their own spot. And you can't rule over other groups of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's on the level of if I were to go and I just beat up an old man out in a supermarket parking lot. I just beat the crap out of an old man, and someone yells at me and they go, hey, stop beating up. Like, you're violently assaulting this defenseless old man. Stop it. And I go, oh, so you have a problem with Jews? And they go, you're Jewish? And I go, yeah, I'm Jewish. And they go, no, I didn't. No, it wasn't about the Jewish thing. It was about you beating up this senior citizen. That was my issue. And I go, okay, so you don't think I have a right to exist? That's what you're telling me. I don't have a right to exist. It's as stupid as that. It's so incredibly shameless in its stupidity that you can't believe they have the balls to ask the question. You think, like, that's a great. Natalie says, you think the senior citizen has no agency? Yeah, exactly. Like, what? None of this has to do anything. The question here is what the Israelis are doing to this group of people justified or not? And it's clearly not. And I'm sorry, but, like, to say something about the Palestinians having agency, like, yeah, of course the Palestinians have agency, but so do the Israelis. And they're also responsible. They used their agency to occupy a group of people for, how long are we going on here? Going on 60 years? 50 something? No, almost 60. Okay? So, like, sorry, that your agency counts too. Anyway, whatever. I thought we would just check in on how ridiculous this woke on woke violence is. But we got to wrap up. Last thought, Rob.
I've got a big weekend of porches, my friends. Providence, Rhode Island on Thursday, Jacksonville on Friday, and then I need the good people in Miami. Start picking up some tickets. I'm there with Chris Vega this Sunday, so come hang out. And then, of course, filming in Denver coming up, and a couple other porches coming your way. Go to porchtour.com. It's the last run of a couple dates of porches.
Hell yeah. And we got Detroit and Kansas City and some other ones coming up. ComicDaveSmith.com for all of those ticket links. Okay, we got to wrap this one. Thank you guys so much, and we'll be back with a brand new one tomorrow. Peace.